Hello there. Welcome into a Monday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or either of those two fine radio stations' apps, which are free to download, free to use, and they are sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health and well-being for all. It will be a veritable cornucopia of sports topics coming your way over the course of the program, and this is the ultimate reaction Monday, right? Want to hear from you. Call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Got a question that is going to go up on our Facebook pages momentarily, which has to do with the very thing I am going to talk about starting right now. That Super Bowl last night went exactly the way the AFC Championship would have gone had Sean Payton not tried to make a point with his backup quarterback, Jarrett Stidham. Seahawks have 4th and short in Patriots territory, up one score mid to late second quarter, right? What do? They kicked the field goal. Why? Because New England had done nothing to that point, and a 2-score lead, even one that is 9-0, is extremely valuable. Something that perhaps eluded Sean Payton's thought process 2 weeks ago. And by doing that, they had confidence like, hey, our defense, they're going to have this little bit of breathing room. They don't have to feel as much pressure. Oh, it's still a 1-score game. Now they got a little bit of a cushion. They can play a little bit more free and easy, knowing that even if New England immediately goes down and scores, Seattle gets it back and they're still winning. And they have a chance to answer. But you know what happened after that, after Seattle kicked that field goal? Nothing. Nothing happened. Nothing happened after that because the Patriots did not have a spark by stopping Seattle on 4th down. They had no momentum to build on because they had stopped Seattle on 4th down. They were down 2 scores. And they were realizing that, like the week before, they had nothing going for them. Seattle made New England earn everything they got last night, which wasn't much. But they made them earn it. They didn't give it to them by making bad decisions and even worse play calls based off of those decisions like the Denver Broncos did. Denver gave New England everything that they got in the AFC Championship. And Seattle, perhaps learning from Sean Payton's mistake, went, yeah, we're not going to do that. New England, you're going to beat us. You're going to do it the honest way. We're not going to give you the ball. We're not going to give you a spark. You're going to have to create your own. And New England answered by saying, we can't. I have zero doubt that if the Broncos kick the field goal in that AFC Championship to go up 10-0, which is a larger lead than Seattle even had last night when they made it 9-0, but I have zero doubt that New England does nothing the rest of the game, which was basically 2.5 quarters because the snowstorm rolled in. There is virtually no difference between the way last night's game played out and the way that the AFC Championship should have played out. And the only person that there is to blame is Sean Payton. The entire playoffs proved to be too big of a stage for Drake May. Right? And the worst thing you could do for someone that had been struggling the way that Drake May had was to give him some confidence, give him a short field. And the Broncos did both of those things. Seattle didn't. And you can't tell me that Denver couldn't have done basically everything Seattle did to Drake May last night, if they would have just taken the points. Last AFC Championship could have played out the exact same way as the Super Bowl did. This was one of the most dominating performances that we have seen in Super Bowl history, and there was nothing remarkable about how Seattle did this. Right? They didn't do any tricks. No second half surprise onside kicks, no home run balls. They played it smart on the offensive side of the football and trusted their defense, which is exactly what the Denver Broncos should have done. But that's not how Sean Payton rolls. And look where it got Denver. Sean Payton should have been physically ill watching that football game last night, knowing that it should be his team that was playing Seattle last night, not New England. Even with their backup, Jarrett Stidham, they should have been in that game last night. And Sean Payton only has himself to blame because it wasn't enough to just win the AFC Championship. He had to drive a stake through the heart of the Patriots with seemingly no thought whatsoever to the risk involved or the repercussions potentially if the Broncos had failed to convert on that fourth down. And then to boot, he puts the ball in Jarrett Stidham's hands and say, go make a play for me, guy that hasn't seen the field all season. I said it 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again. Sean Payton is the biggest reason why the Denver Broncos were in the AFC Championship, and I'm not going to take that away from him. He deserves an immense amount of credit for the fact that the Broncos got as far as they did, but he is also the biggest reason why they did not play in last night's game. And these two things can be true simultaneously, and they are. The domino effect that he set in motion in that AFC Championship kept the Broncos from playing last night. Now, I cannot, to be fair to the situation, go one step further and sit here on a Monday and claim that the result would have been different had the Broncos played the Seahawks last night. Got to be fair. Even if Bo Nix was the Broncos quarterback, which is the ultimate, not revisionist history, but ultimate what if, right? If Bo Nix was healthy. Yeah, if Bo Nix was healthy, he bails Sean Payton out on that terrible fourth down call, and the Broncos probably win that football game and play last night. But even with Bo Nix, this Broncos team is not beating that Seattle team. Now, you can say that Bo Nix would have maybe, kind of like we were talking about with Jarrett Stidham, maybe Bo Nix doesn't fumble the ball security, not taking sacks. We know would Seattle tie a Super Bowl record for the most sacks? Yeah, maybe they wouldn't have had as many of those. I'm not sitting here saying it wouldn't have been a more compelling game than it was last night. But to think that the Broncos should have been in the Super Bowl and would have won it, I can't take that next step. I can't. Seattle was the best team all season in the NFL, and either we weren't paying attention or we didn't want to acknowledge it because it's the Seahawks. But the fact of the matter is, from beginning to end, they were the best team in the NFL. And for at least that reason, last night was a satisfying result because the best team won. They won the whole thing. and they would have been a better team than Denver. The Broncos would have had almost no advantages going into that game. They wouldn't have had the better quarterback. They wouldn't have had a better running game. They wouldn't have had better weapons in the pass game. And maybe you could say that the defense was a push, although I would give Seattle's defense the edge only just over the Broncos defense. Special teams, that's a push. Marvin Mims, Shaheed, that's a wash. Lutz, Myers, okay. Perhaps there would have been a coaching advantage in favor of the Denver Broncos, although this is where it gets really messy because it was the Broncos coach who went for it on fourth down in the AFC Championship. So it's hard for me. I think I would still say Vance and Sean Payton over Mike McDonald and Clint Kubiak. But again, how big of a difference is that? So any advantage that you could possibly say the Broncos would have in that game would be a small one. And you add it all up across the board, and you would come out with Seattle being the all-around better football team. Seattle are absolutely deserving champions. This is not about if they would have played this team, that team. They would have beaten them too. But when we talk about how bad that game was, because it was one of the worst Super Bowls I have ever witnessed, it's in large part due to how good Seattle is. Again, credit where credit is due. But the discrepancy between how good Seattle is to their opponent would have been less if the Denver Broncos would have been in that game. And again, the Broncos have no one to blame but themselves. Sean Payton has no one to blame but himself. New England's tackles, their quarterback, too young for that stage. But see, the thing is, they were too young for any of these stages. I mean, think about how fortunate New England was to get to the Super Bowl. The amount of things that had to happen, C.J. Stroud imploding, Sean Payton making one of the worst decisions that he could have possibly made. Maybe the worst decision of his coaching career, other than allowing that Bounty Gate thing to go on. New England, they weren't ready. They weren't ready, and it's not their fault. You know, Will Campbell's a rookie. Drake May's in year 2, but these are two of the most important players on the field. New England, in an ideal world, maybe not for New England fans, but just the way that these things seem to go with sports, would have been better served to lose at some point in the AFC playoffs, learn from it, build up that scar tissue, and be better for it the next time around. And there's still hope of that moving forward for this New England team. It's just they could have avoided getting absolutely embarrassed last night. And the flaws of New England were the flaws of New England in the AFC Championship in the round before. And Houston and Denver wet the bed. And New England got through. So I'm not going to say that the Broncos deserve to be in that game last night, but they should have been. And it would have been a better viewing experience. But the result being different, no. Seattle would have beaten Denver too. So we got to be fair here as we start our conversation today. Better match for Seattle? Absolutely. Different result, and the Broncos are Super Bowl champions? No. Wasn't in the cards. 719-247-1313. Your thoughts on all things Super Bowl, but our question of the day, more pointed, would the Broncos have done better? That Question is posed on our Facebook pages, 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. You can also call or text in your thoughts at 719-247-1313. Coming up next, why there is only one position to take on what happened to Lindsey Vonn yesterday, but yet so many people aren't taking that position. You're listening to Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Get ready, Colorado Springs. The loudest, fastest, craziest show on ice is coming. Extreme International Ice Racing hits the Broadmoor World Arena Sunday, February 21st. Nitro-powered bikes, 14,000 RPM, and no brakes. It's pure chaos on frozen ground. Get your tickets now at AXS.com. Speaking of frozen ground, I genuinely do not understand the reaction to Lindsey Vonn crashing 18 seconds into her downhill race yesterday, and just brutal news to wake up to, because I'm not getting up at 3:30 on a Sunday, with all due respect. I don't understand how anyone can be critical of Lindsey Vonn for doing what she did yesterday. Not because it's the wrong time or it's insensitive, with her getting hurt. That's what we do, right? We converse, and the day out, is anybody pulling punches with the New England Patriots? Today's a pretty brutal day for them too. That's not why I don't understand it or push back against the criticism. It's because the idea that she was competing with the torn ACL was something worthy of criticism. That's what I don't get. Why are people criticizing her for giving it a go on that ACL? I mean, since when do we vilify athletes for pushing themselves and trying to be out there and compete? When is that a bad thing? Like Simone Biles, if you remember Olympic last summer games, she was widely criticized because she wasn't willing to give it a go for her team. She was being selfish with the twisties. And again, they got to come up with a better name than that. But she was dizzy, like her equilibrium was off in a sport where she has to do a bunch of flips. You could see where that would be dangerous. But she got criticized because she didn't push through, but Lindsey Vonn does, and she's selfish too? I don't understand that. I don't remember Terrell Owens getting anything but praised for coming back and playing for the Philadelphia Eagles on a broken leg in the Super Bowl. That was actually the one of the few moments where T.O. was praised, where everybody liked the guy because he was battling to make his way back, to be there, to compete, because that's what we want from our athletes. We want them to compete. And Lindsey Vonn competed yesterday, and she blew it. Like, the lack of empathy that was coming out. Well, maybe you shouldn't race on a torn ACL. Like, really? This is what we're doing to Lindsey Vonn? Now, can we say that her ACL or lack thereof was a contributing factor to her crashing? Yes. You can say that. You can say that she was limited, and that's fine. She wasn't able to do maybe everything that she normally does because of the torn ACL. But I will remind you that just a day before, she ran third going down the mountain in a very similar way. So the idea that this was somehow inevitable, I don't see how that could be the case. Now, my expectations were not high for her, but she just had the third best time on Saturday. And it was all good. But yeah, you could, with the way she's turning and stuff, you could say that her ACL injury was a contributing factor to her clipping that gate, but I don't think that was the reason why she took the turn the way she did. I think she knew at 41 years old that she had to get her margin for error was almost zero going into it before the ACL. So she was going to try to do everything she can to shave a few seconds off of her time. Is that worthy? She didn't cheat. But there are really two separate conversations here when it comes to what happened to Lindsey Vonn yesterday. One is whether the ACL injury contributed to the crash, and my answer is very likely yes. The other is whether she should have been in the race at all, and the answer to me is an emphatic no. Of course she should have been in the race. If Bo Nix could have played on his ankle in the AFC Championship and the day before the game, going through practice, looked like Bo Nix, would you be saying, nah, you should let Jarrett Stidham play? No, Bo Nix got the Denver Broncos to where they were. Lindsey Vonn qualified. This wasn't some sponsor exemption. She competed and she qualified for that race. She had every right to be in that race. And this was her last go of it, probably regardless of how yesterday went. This was going to be it for her. So she was laying it all out on the line for one last race, one last chance at Olympic glory. What is wrong with that? And this is not even, you can't even bring in like the teammates thing to this. She has no teammates. It's an individual event. Who is she harming by being in the race other than herself? I don't get it. I don't get why there should be any other emotion besides, just being absolutely gutted for her and admiring that she even gave it a go. Right? When other athletes tear their ACL, that's it. That's all. See you next year. Lindsey Vonn, a week later, was competing in her Super Bowl. How is that not worthy of admiration, regardless of how it went yesterday? So my take on Lindsey Vonn has not changed. I just now feel awful that she crashed and broke her leg. But it's all like, all of my feelings are supportive of Lindsey Vonn. I don't have a critical thing to say about her. But so many people did. It was bizarre. It's like the Olympics, we get so hyped up, and in our culture, the way we talk about sports, it gets amplified because it's once every 4 years, and it's countries versus other countries, right? It's the biggest sporting event, all this kind of stuff. And I think that we get ramped up even more. And it brings out either the most over-the-top praise or the most over-the-top criticism. But if any end of that spectrum should be met by most people, it's the former. All of these performances in sports history that we praise, Bernard King and T.O., and where did we land on Paul Pierce? I think at the time, at least, with Paul Pierce in the NBA Finals. We revere athletes who battled through it, and Lindsey Vonn battled through a more significant injury than any of those athletes did. She should get more respect than any of these guys. Just really weird. And terrible to wake up to yesterday. Lindsey Vonn did just post on Instagram. It's a long post, so I won't read the whole thing verbatim, but a couple of parts of it that I wanted to bring to you. She said, I was simply 5 inches too tight on my line when my right arm hooked inside of the gate, twisting me and resulting in my crash. My ACL and past injuries had nothing to do with my crash whatsoever. From my standpoint, I still think it's worthy of. She feels like it's not. But I feel like it possibly could have. Maybe in her mind it doesn't, or maybe she doesn't want to believe that because she knows what the criticism has been like over the last couple of days. I don't know. I might disagree with that. But here's Lindsey Vonn saying, and you have to take it into consideration. She's saying her ACL injury had nothing to do with her crash yesterday. While yesterday did not end the way I had hoped, and despite the intense physical pain it caused, I have no regrets. And similar to ski racing, we take risks in life. We dream, we love, we jump, and sometimes we fall. I hope that if you take anything from my journey, it's that you all have the courage to dare greatly. Life is too short not to take chances on yourself, because the only failure in life is not trying. And she ends it with, I believe in you just as you believed in me. Imagine being somebody trashing on her yesterday and today for her pushing through an injury that most athletes would dare not even try. A disappointing end certainly to the story, but what a story. I have nothing but admiration and sympathy kind of at the same time for Lindsey Vonn, but nothing negative. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247 1313. Get you updated on what's going on in the Olympics. Kind of a quiet day, save for the event I am watching on repeat because it was quite compelling at the time it was happening. USA mixed doubles curling is going to the gold medal game for the first time ever by beating Italy, who are the defending Olympic champions, and the Olympics are being held in Italy. And one more thing on top of it, Italy earlier today had beaten the U.S. in the round robin. So they exacted revenge the same day on the defending Olympic champions, who are also the hosts. Shouts to the Coreys. They're both named Corey, spelled differently, but 719-247-1313. Coming up next, how does a road trip to Fargo this fall sound? You're listening to 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Air Force hockey back at Cadet Ice Arena this Friday and Saturday night, taking on Mercyhurst as they continue to climb the Atlantic hockey standings down in the stretch of this season. So, Friday's night's game is at 7:05. If you'd like to go, I got a pair of tickets for you, granted that you are the 13th texter to text Falcons and your name to 719-247-1313. That's Falcons and your name. And the 13th texter will win a pair of tickets to see Air Force hockey hosting Mercyhurst on Friday. Speaking of Air Force, but not speaking of Air Force hockey because they don't play in the Mountain West, big get over the weekend, I think, for the Mountain West Conference, as they are going to be welcoming North Dakota State, perennial FCS power, starting this upcoming season. And I know what you're thinking. Yes, they have to totally redo the schedule because they already released the opponents and now they're going to have to change it. Now, it's not going to add another conference game. As Brent Brigham of the Gazette pointed out when the reporting came out about North Dakota State, that it would not lead to more conference games being played. It's just like when Grand Canyon joined up for all the sports this year, but not football because they don't play football. They had to reconfigure the conference schedule, but it didn't add to it. So it'll still be the same number of conference games for Air Force and everybody else. It's just that you may see one opponent get swapped out for North Dakota State. Stay tuned for that. But this is a huge get, I think for the Mountain West, because this is a team that has dominated FCS football forever. And in North Dakota State, I have Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, like they have been the preeminent program in FCS for a very, very long time. And I don't think it's going to be too big of a jump for them to go to this level. Now, can they count on that same level of dominance? I mean, we're talking about national championships year in and year out. Probably not. But I think it's actually a good thing for the rest of the Mountain West, if I'm being honest, that because they're jumping up a level, they can't go to the postseason. They can't play for a conference title or go to a bowl game or anything like that for 3 years, which is good because I don't think it's going to take long for North Dakota State to be the class of the Mountain West. You look at the newfangled Mountain West Conference, and just to remind you, Hawaii, UTEP, Northern Illinois, and now North Dakota State are coming in. Wyoming, Air Force, New Mexico, Nevada, UNLV stay the same, and UC Davis as well. That's the new Mountain West in football. North Dakota State could be at the top of the conference as soon as this year. Because what I look at is the program that is in place and the investment in going to my point, 8 figures, the buy-in. I mean, that is a program that is 100% committed to doing whatever it takes to be successful in college football. It's not going to take them long to be really, really good in the Mountain West. So it's great news for the Mountain West. It may not be great news for the other teams in the Mountain West because North Dakota State might come in and start running things here before too long. But again, first couple of years, they're not going to be eligible for the conference title game or the or college football playoff or any of that kind of stuff. But this is a really good get from the Mountain West. And let's not forget that the arms race between the Mount West and the new Pac-12 is still going on. Like, that's not over now. And each side has kind of gotten one over. I think you have to say the Pac-12 getting Gonzaga is a big win for them in basketball. I thought that the Mount West did a really good job of recovering and getting GCU on both the men's and the women's side. GCU is legit. So they did a good job recovering, but it doesn't make up for the fact that the Pac-12 got Gonzaga, one of the blue blood programs in college basketball. This one goes to the Mount West. That's getting over on the Pac-12. And this power struggle, this tit for tat, this arms race, whatever you want to call it, it's not ending anytime soon. It's not. And the Mount West gets North Dakota State. Their television deal is superior to the one that the Pac-12 got. Mount West got Fox. So in this breakup that has gone on, I think you got to put the Mount West out in front. And as college athletics continues to evolve, there's nothing holding the teams that bolted for the Pac-12 back from rejoining the Mount West. I mean, money, but as we found out, money is no object to a lot of these institutions if it gets them into the right conference. So it's this perpetual struggle to be the preeminent West Coast athletic conference. And I think that the Mount West is out in front of the Pac-12 right now in that. And getting North Dakota State helps them. Now, the geography is all goofy, I will grant you. Northern Illinois, North Dakota State, UTEP. Did I mention UTEP earlier? UTEP is now in the Mount West. Air Force, Wyoming, New Mexico, the two teams located in Nevada, UC Davis, Hawaii. It's going to be an interesting looking conference. Well, really across all sports next year. But really good get from Gloria Nevarez and the Mount West. And trust me, there are some programs that decided to bolt that are kind of looking back over their shoulder and going, ooh, did we make a mistake? I'm telling you that those programs exist. Not naming names, I'm just saying those programs exist in the Pac-12 that are going a little bit of buyer's remorse, if you will. So well done to the Mountain West. So North Dakota State, starting this fall, will be playing football with the Falcons and the Cowboys and all of those teams that are in the Mountain West. But look, I still, like, I'm on the Mountain West side here, but I still lament the fact that they just couldn't have come together and been one entity. Because I could say that the Mountain West right now, all told, might be getting the better of the Pac-12, and I believe that they are, but I still look at the Mountain West as lesser than they used to be. Basically, they're the better of two lesser conferences right now. And if they just would have stayed together, they could have cherry-picked a little bit. Can you imagine? So let me spin you a scenario in which the Mountain West and the Pac-12 settle whatever differences they have. I think it depends on who the person is that's leading the conference, I think, is ultimately what it came down to. Who would be in charge, the Pac-12 or the Mount West of this, mountain pack or whatever they were going to call themselves. Now imagine it as currently constructed, and now you add Gonzaga for basketball, North Dakota State for football. And it's San Diego State, it's UNLV, it's Colorado State, it's San Jose State and North Dakota State and Gonzaga, and maybe they add Grand Canyon. I mean, think about how much stronger that conference could have been. Because part of why the Pac-12 did all of this is because they have this cockamamie idea that they're somehow going to get let back into the circle. That the now Power Four is going to go, wow, that Pac-12, they need to be back. You have power status again. They're never going to do that. Now, they were probably never going to do that anyway, but what gives you a better chance? If they ever decided that they were willing to let a conference on the West Coast get back in to power or autonomous status? Is it with one really good conference that's been split into two? Or if they would have been one really good conference and then added North Dakota State and added Gonzaga in basketball? So I think this is all well and good that the Mount West is getting over on the Pac-12, and it does. I'm happy about the whole thing, but I still think that some people maybe should have worked out their differences. And I don't know. I wasn't in those meetings. I'm not pointing a finger at a specific person. I have a pretty decent idea of what went down, but I wasn't in those meetings. I'm just saying whether the fault is on the Pac-12 or the Mount West and why they couldn't stay together, I still lament that, because they could be even better if they were together. And maybe one day that's where it's going to end up. Because I do think inevitably, I'm still on this, and I've been on this since the pandemic. The SEC is going to be the Southern United States Conference. The Big Ten is going to be the Northern United States Conference, and you better be in one of those conferences or you're going to be playing a different level of college athletics. Like, we're still going in that direction. But maybe it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now. In the meantime, a lot of other stuff can happen. And maybe these two conferences decide it's better for both of them. Or maybe one just kind of concedes and bends the knee and goes, we lost. And then they combine. And then that would be a stronger step towards, hey, Big Ten or SEC, would you be willing to absorb us so we can play the highest level at the highest level of college athletics that there is? Because we're still definitely heading for that two worlds. There's no way that every team in the Pac-12, the Mount West, the Big 12, the ACC are all going to be playing big boy college athletics. Right? There's going to be a two-tier system, and whether they have promotion and relegation or how that all works remains to be seen. But there are going to be two different levels. And the next few years, as the last couple have been, is about putting yourself in the best position to make the next jump. Right? Everybody, they're all frogs, and they're jumping from lily pad to lily pad. What gets you closer to that next lily pad that you want to jump to? And in the Western United States, it's whether you're going to be with the Mountain West or the Pac-12. And North Dakota State decided we're going to be with the Mountain West. Good call for them. Great call for the Mountain West. That's going to be fun, adding the Bison to the mix. 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on that. Coming up next, we'll get back into the Super Bowl. It was bad, right? No doubt about that. It was bad. How bad was it? We take a stroll down unfortunate memory lane next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in, hour 2, busy Monday. Glad to have you aboard. Shouts to those of you watching the show on our social media platforms. Facebook is the easiest one, Twitter as well. Instagram has given us a little bit of problems. If you follow me on Instagram, I guess ironically it's working okay, but I'm having some trouble streaming on Instagram for Extra Sports 1300. At any rate, plenty of other places that you can go. And while you're there, if you'd be so kind as to like, subscribe, follow, and drop a comment. Join the conversation, because this is a better show when you are a part of it. I want to reiterate, if you were just joining me, that yes, if the Denver Broncos would have been playing last night, it would have been a better game. And I think the inexperience of the Patriots, which was quite frankly on display throughout most of the playoffs, it's just the Houston Texans and Denver Broncos couldn't have done anything about it. I think it would have been a better game. It wouldn't have been a different result. And that's also, we got to, because I just heard Dan Patrick, and if you're listening on KVOR, you didn't get a chance to hear it. Dan Patrick was, in his Above the Noise commentary, was pushing back against the idea that it was a bad game. Right, Ray? Am I getting that right? That he said we can't call it a bad game?
No, we can't call it a bad game. It was actually, I believe he used the word elite because of the defensive play.
Okay. Now, big fan of Dan Patrick. I disagree, because we in this country, which is the main country that cares about this sport, have collectively decided that entertainment value is tied to offense. And by the way, we have decided this with every sport that we watch. Defense may win championships, but offense makes us more entertained. And when we talk about where this Super Bowl unfortunately ranks among the worst we've ever seen, the fact that Seattle put on a defensive clinic does not mean it was suddenly one of the best Super Bowls ever. No, it was one of the worst, because it was way more defense than offense, and because it wasn't close. It was not competitive. And both of those things are credit to Seattle. Seattle is a worthy champion. Seattle is the best team in the NFL, no question about it. But we don't have to like the game you played in, even if we give you the flowers that you deserve. I'm giving Seattle all the credit, all the flowers they deserve. That was a garbage game last night, and it was not an enjoyable experience to watch unless you were a Seattle fan. Two things can be true. And when I think of the worst Super Bowls I've ever seen, ones led by defense are always on that list. I'm sorry. But I think there's a way that you can give Seattle credit and also say, man, that was a terrible football game last night. Because it was terrible. It was not competitive, and it wasn't exciting. And it's been this way for my entire life, that we care more about offense than defense. When it comes to entertainment, when it comes to judging how good Seattle is, we take defense into account and hold it in high regard. But last night, as much as the deciding game of the NFL season is an entertainment product, the biggest television event of the year, and when one team is dominating the other with their defense, and it's leading to a non-competitive game, it's not entertaining. It's not going to be classified as a good game. So I think what Dan Patrick is saying is like, I think what he's worried about is that we get into the trap of saying like somehow Seattle's not elite or a worthy champion because they're led by their defense. That's not it at all. And people around here more than anywhere else can appreciate when a defense is the reason why a team wins a Super Bowl. Okay, but it was not an entertaining football game, and it was one of the worst that I can recall. It wasn't the worst. I know that was the conversation last night. Wasn't the worst. The New England Rams Super Bowl I had the numbers written down here. Super Bowl 43 was the worst Super Bowl that I have ever seen. Because that was everything last night was, except there was no moment like you had late last night where Drake May absolutely delivered a dime for that touchdown where you're like, oh, mate. I mean, it lasted only like 60 seconds where you felt that way. But there was a moment where like, oh, maybe could this thing get interesting? Not that New England was going to rally and win the game, but just was this going to be compelling down the stretch? And then about 60 seconds later, you're like, no, it's not going to. That New England LA game, Super Bowl 43, was excruciating to watch. And at no point did the Rams have any chance to at least make it interesting. But what puts it above last night's is that New England didn't exactly light it up either. But that was, to me, and forevermore, will be the worst Super Bowl I've ever seen. And I wasn't at my home watching that, which made it worse. There's nothing worse than being stuck at a Super Bowl party or at an establishment watching a terrible Super Bowl. You feel like there's no way out. So that Super Bowl 43 worst. This one would be the second worst. Also in consideration, Super Bowl 48 with Denver and Seattle. Sorry, Seattle. You played one of the best Super Bowls. You got that going for you. Unfortunately, that one didn't go your way. The two you have won have been absolute snooze fests, which I don't expect you to care one iota. And if I were in your position, I wouldn't either. But Super Bowl 48, as soon as the ball went over Peyton Manning's head, that was a wrap, and it was not a fun game at all to watch. Remember the Giants in Baltimore, Dilfer versus Collins, Super Bowl 35? And it wasn't that. There was one stretch where the Giants ran back a kickoff for a touchdown, and then the Ravens did, and that was the kind of like with Drake May throwing that touchdown last night where he went, ooh, this is a little entertaining, this right here. But the rest of the game was terrible. It was played by another bias that we have as football fans. We care very much who the quarterbacks are, and you can't get worse than Kerry Collins and Trent Dilfer. So that one was really bad. That was a close. No, that didn't end up being close either, particularly. But, and then this may be a little self-serving, but understand the final margin. I think last year, Philadelphia, Kansas City was one of the worst I've ever seen. Now, I could easily put that Super Bowl and the Bucs Chiefs Super Bowl at the top of my list. That's really not why I'm including Philadelphia, Kansas City. There was a moment where you thought Mahomes maybe, and then it wasn't. But this is not really about how I feel about that game. And I do think for many, it might not even crack the top 5 because I think so many people delighted in the curb stomping that the Eagles delivered on probably the most hated team in the NFL. But though that's like, I should have done Mount Rushmore. Let's drop Philly, KC, Mount Rushmore of terrible Super Bowls. Super Bowl 43, Rams and Patriots. Last night, Super Bowl 48, Seahawks over Broncos. And then the Trent Dilfer-led Ravens beating the Giants. That would be my Mount Rushmore of terrible Super Bowls. But it wasn't a good game. It wasn't fun. It wasn't compelling. And it would be another thing, too, if, the turnovers that Seattle forced, turned into big plays the other way, right? If somebody did pick 6, that would add to the entertainment value. But it was like, oh, no, Drake May's just making awful decisions with the football. But we saw that. And it just further fortifies my point about how the Denver Broncos, if they would have had their you-know-what together, that they should have been in that game, even with Jared Stidham as their quarterback. Because we saw how bad Drake May was with the football in the Houston game. And not for nothing, but I talked about this on Friday that I thought that Seattle's offense would put up enough points to draw Drake May out and force Mike Vrabel and Josh McDaniels to lean on Drake May's arm rather than his legs. And the moment that happened, it was a disaster for New England, which it had been throughout the postseason. It was just that the Broncos, by going for it on the 4th and 1 and not converting and giving New England hope and keeping it a 1-score game, New England never had to get out of that. They never had to force Drake May to throw it. They could keep running the football. It could be more well-balanced because there's only a 1-score game. But what we saw from Drake May last night, it wasn't a revelation. We've been seeing it. And look, it doesn't change what Drake May did this regular season, which was put up an MVP caliber year. But it's a different animal in the playoffs and especially the Super Bowl. And Drake May clearly just not ready. But how many athletes have we talked about over the years that are phenomenal in the regular season, MVP quality? And I'm not just talking the NFL, I'm talking all sports. And then they get to the postseason and they can't get it done. Drake May's certainly not the first, and he won't be the last. And I think Drake May, to add a hopeful tone to all this, will be better for this. There's a clear thing for him to work on as he moves forward with his still very young career. So when I talk about this being a referendum on Drake May in New England, it's this year. I mean, it's this year. It's not, I still think they're a stock worth buying. I'll roll with Vrabel and Drake May into the future. But they weren't ready for it last night. And quite frankly, the Texans or the Denver Broncos should have done what Seattle did last night. And maybe we would have gotten a more compelling football game. 719-247-1313. Worst Super Bowl ever? Question mark. And how different is last night if it's the Denver Broncos and not the New England Patriots in that game? Take your thoughts and continue with Drive Time Sports on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. the game with LA and New England. We all know what that one is, even though Roman numerals for me are apparently difficult. So, yeah, Super Bowl 53 is the worst. Last night's on the Mount Rushmore. Super Bowl 48 with the snap over Peyton Manning's head. And after that, like, who even really remembers what happened other than Seattle whoop Denver? Like, you know that, but like, is there any other moment in the game that you even remember from that after the ball went over Peyton Manning's head? And I think that the Broncos were kind of like that too. I think they blacked out after that. And then watching Trent Dilfer and Kerry Collins battle is like, come on now. Although that was another one where all-time great defense, that Baltimore Ravens defense, but it just goes to show, like, it doesn't mean that the respect for the champion diminishes. But it means it's not a good game and will not be remembered as one of the greatest Super Bowls ever. Sorry. It's the way it works. Got a problem with it? Go and hug your Lombardi trophy. I'm sure it'll make you feel a lot better if you're a Seahawks fan. Like, I think Seahawks fans care very little to not at all about the entertainment value of last night, and they shouldn't. But for those of us who don't have that proverbial dog in the fight, we would like a compelling show on our television sets. And we didn't get that. 719-247-1313. Ray, you got the text line up? Can we do some texts here?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So right away, Super Bowl 12 has to be up there.
Who's that?
This is from, who was in it? Or
both.
Sorry. I remember. From the 719.
There you go.
Dave. Super Bowl 12 has got to be up there. Haven't seen a quarterback get benched at halftime for his poor performance since then.
Who is in Super Bowl 12?
I don't. I couldn't
see
tell you right now.
That's the thing. Ray and I were going through this earlier and looking at some of the lists that came out, and I think the way I'm framing this conversation is the worst Super Bowls you have ever seen, because I can't speak to how bad Super Bowl 4 was. So, and I know like football historians will be able to point out, but for our purposes, I think it's just which ones do you recall being as bad maybe as last night. So there's one from.
It was Cowboys and Denver.
Okay. So. We looked up, whose list was it that we were looking up that like the Broncos were every Broncos Super Bowl except the Packers one was.
Yeah, I think it was like 4, like 3 out of the top 10.
It was all of John Elway's losses in the Super Bowl, including the one Dave just mentioned.
Yes.
And it was 48, and it was also the the one that they beat the Falcons was also labeled as one of the worst.
And okay, so this one from the 719 from Donnie. Maybe the Super Bowl should have been played in a dome. That would have made it more entertaining.
Is this because of my thing with the
domes?
No, it's not. They don't have to be played in domes. They just have to be played in either nice weather or domes or retractable roofs. Right. So we don't get the blizzard that we had in Denver during the AFC Championship that you want to talk about, not a compelling football game. The AFC Championship was about as bad as it got too.
From Brett, the worst Super Bowl I have ever saw was one in which the Denver Broncos got out to a quick 10-0 lead. 10-0 lead on Elway to Ricky Natil bomb, and then lost 55-10.
That was the San Francisco one, wasn't it?
That's before my time.
I'm going to tell you the same thing that I tell our colleague Richard Randall. Read the text beforehand so we have all the information that we need.
Okay.
To go on that. So, all right, what else do we got?
I'm going to bring it up, but I just want to bring up, if we're going to compare last night and we say it was defensive, the Seattle had a great defense.
Masterclass.
Can we look at Super Bowl 50?
And say it was one of the worst?
I'm not. It wasn't great.
But it's the. No, I don't think Super Bowl 50 was an all-time great one. I mean, there's a middle ground here. But I think what makes the last Super Bowl in that stadium because it was a closer game. It was more in the balance, whereas I don't know about. I mean, really, when Derek Hall stripped Drake May, you knew it was like done then. But I'm telling you, it's not just because of the Broncos aspect of this, but when Seattle went up 9-0, didn't you feel like New England was just not going to win that football game?
You did.
And that's the same thing it could have been in the AFC Championship if not for Sean Payton trying to prove he's the smartest guy in the room.
From Albert, Seattle's performance last night was reminiscent of the great NFC's dominance over the AFC in the 80s. The Bears, Giants, and Redskins gave us boring Super Bowls back then too.
Right. And those teams are held in very high regard in NFL history, and those games are held in very low regard, which is precisely the point I am making. We can acknowledge how good Seattle is and how much of a disparity there was between Seattle and, let's be honest, anyone coming out of the AFC. And still talk about how bad the game is. But that's kind of the next thing. Are we going to look at this Seattle defense, if we're going to do this? Are we going to look at this Seattle defense and put it up with the Broncos in Super Bowl 50 or the Ravens or the Bears? I know the Bears is before your time, so I'm not going to raise. So I'm not going to. But would you say that this Seattle defense is an all-time great defense?
No.
I'm not either.
No.
I'm not either. So for this year, Seattle is a deserving and worthy champion. They are the best team in the league, and no team coming out of the AFC would have made a difference, I don't think. And my point with the Broncos is it would have been a more compelling game, but still would have ended up with Seattle winning the game. I'm supremely confident of that. But they don't, and that's kind of the other conversation that we naturally have after a Super Bowl is like, where's this team? And I just think they're going to be, I don't believe it's really the start of anything for Seattle. I mean, I think they're going to be a good team, but I don't think Seattle's going to become a dynasty, and I don't think that we look at any aspect of the Seattle team as being particularly historic.
Yeah.
Now, if they would, let me ask this question. If Seattle shut out New England,
that would be different. But no.
Would you still be looking at it like, well, New England wasn't the right matchup? Would it still be very much? Yeah,
I would, just because if it was against Denver, it's kind of like I don't know. I just feel like New England didn't impress enough throughout the playoffs,
right,
to be like, oh, this is going to be a great chess match.
Right. Denver's defense, to the most apples to apples comparison I think we can make, what Denver did in Super Bowl 50 makes them one of the better defenses of my lifetime, because they did it to a 15-1 football team led by the reigning MVP.
Right.
And like, I know Drake May finished 1 point back, but also Cam Newton was playing like an MVP throughout the playoffs.
There wasn't a question about who was MVP.
And that too. It wasn't. And that one of the, and even broader scope, one of the things that this season will be remembered for is, I think, unfortunately for Seattle, even though they are worthy champions, this is going to be a season where we remember that it was kind of, it wasn't a remarkable season. It was an unremarkable Super Bowl at the end of an unremarkable season, because you had the current dynasty that was down. You had the Buffalo Bills were down. Baltimore Ravens were down. San Francisco was just ravaged by injury. And that is a team that when they are all healthy is, one that you would hold up against a lot of teams over the last decade or so. Even Philadelphia, I don't think is good. So like all of these teams that there are a lot of teams we expected to be very good that weren't. And there are also some, I just think it was, like I said, it was an unremarkable Super Bowl at the end of an unremarkable year for the NFL.
I read social media and they said all year fans wanted something different in the Super Bowl. We wanted different teams, and that was the end result. And you see what I'm saying? Like how disappointing is that?
Well, yeah, I'm one, and it's easy, people misinterpret what I'm saying. I'd be saying this if I were hosting a show in the heyday of the New England dynasty. But I've said this about the Chiefs, the Warriors. Pick your favorite dynasty or your least favorite, as it were. And we like those things. Deep down, we like these teams that we know. We like teams that we can root against.
Yep.
Who's rooting against either one of those teams? I thought in their own way, they were both very good stories.
Yeah.
To get there.
It was one of those, you don't care who wins.
We had no vested interest one way or another. And when Kansas City is in the Super Bowl, there's a vested interest. When New England was in Super Bowls, there's a vested interest. Even if it was Philadelphia going back to the Super Bowl, there would be a vested interest. The being familiar with the teams, but also having a villain is always more compelling. It just is. And there was no villain. There was no buy-in in terms of, and you said it, you're not to, have your wife catch strays here, but she didn't know anybody on these teams. And she's married to somebody who's very much into sports and knows a lot. And by osmosis, you would think she'd pick up a few names, but it just speaks to the Patriots just arrived and Seattle. And I'll just say this. So to even it out, my son didn't know any of these people.
Right.
He knows Drake May. That's it. And I think it's just because of social media and Drake May's nickname is Drake May. Like there just wasn't a lot of buy-in, and it led to kind of the hype for this game being not what it's been over the past few years.
She picked up one. She picked up one name. It was Love on the Seattle Seahawks. Julian Love. That's the only name she picked up. I wonder why. But yeah, no, you always want for anybody who complains about it, the bad guy is fun to root against.
But also too, it had a chance to, the best case scenario, I think, for this Super Bowl would have been similar to Rams Bengals. But the problem is too, would you have said would Bo Nix have been considered, because we're going with the premise that if the Broncos would have been in it, it would have been a more compelling game.
Yes.
I think we agree on this. But would Bo Nix have the same aura as Joe Burrow, for instance? I don't know if he would have going into the game.
I wouldn't say as much, but more than Drake May.
Drake May was runner-up for MVP this year.
Yeah, but the story of the Broncos, Bo Nix, kind of.
I guess a lot of it would depend on how the AFC Championship played out.
Right.
If Bo Nix went berserker in the AFC Championship, if he were healthy, then I think there would be a little bit more to it. But I think to that Rams Bengals Super Bowl, and that was a somebody different.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that we look at the Rams or the Bengals in any special way all these years after, but at least that game was memorable.
Right.
And there was something to that, even though it was the two, teams that we don't normally see in the Super Bowl. something different there, and it was kind of compelling. This, we got something different, and it wasn't compelling. So best case scenario, it's the Rams-Bengals Super Bowl, where we got a good game, but we don't come away from that with any, big conversations about how great. Although going to the Super Bowl, didn't that put Joe Burrow in the Allen Lamar Mahomes? So I guess there was some lasting
Kind of.
impact.
I think Joe Burrow was kind of in there before that.
Okay.
Just because of what he did in college, and the
That's
hype.
true.
The
He
hype
did come in with
the hype coming in was really strong for Joe Burrow, and he's lived up to it for the most part.
And look, Joe Burrow just kind of arrived on the national scene, to your point, in the NFL just that year. But the point you make about LSU is perfect, because people knew Joe Burrow before.
Mm-hmm.
Drake May, because he went to North Carolina, not as many people knew about him coming out of college. Like if it was, say, Caleb Williams on the other side, it would have been there would have been some of that. But again, all of this is not to detract from, not every champion is, worthy of, the big historical conversation. I mean, to be fair, are the Denver Nuggets their championship team? Do we talk about them in the pantheon of greatest teams ever assembled or anything?
I think as Nuggets fans, you talk about them, but you're right. If you look at the grand scope of things, you don't. It was like a weird Nuggets versus Miami Heat, and everybody talks about, well, it should have been the Celtics, and it's kind of just unmemorable at that point. The only thing that's memorable,
right, we have to be
honestly,
fair.
The most memorable part for a lot of people, Jokic saying, I get to go home, and the parade.
Wins parade.
Parade. Yeah.
I need to go home. Now Jokic is obviously an all-time great player, but this is the issue that the NBA goes through. Not to, go too far off track here. This is the what the NBA is running into, is that we have worthy champions for that year, credit where credit is given, but the staying power of, and I think we're even craving it to some extent, maybe not around here, but I think a lot of people are secretly craving Oklahoma City to get back and win. So again, there's, this power team. Yeah. If Oklahoma City doesn't win this year, and it's, Denver would be different because they just won and there would be a different conversation. Let's say Houston wins.
Right.
And then they're continuing running through this. I think this is a real problem for the NBA, that there's no continuity from one year to the next when it comes to their champions, and there's no real buy-in, investment, and carryover to where, I remember that guy, or I remember that guy.
When does a good guy turn into a bad guy on a team, if that makes sense? Like Steph Curry, Golden State, you loved him, and then
I don't think anybody has anybody turned on Steph Curry.
But you turned on Golden State.
Turned on Golden State, but Golden State also has Draymond Green.
Yeah, but you weren't worried about Draymond Green. Yeah, he was annoying, but you weren't worried about him. It was Steph, and maybe you didn't hate him, but you were annoyed. You were also getting annoyed.
It's funny. I don't think I was, but maybe I'm not the right person to ask, because I am somebody who appreciates the Bulls, the Warriors, the Chiefs, the Patriots, and kind of want that.
So, because I wasn't there obviously during that time, was the Bulls, did they turn into that? It's fun for a little bit, and then after a while, it's like, okay, now you guys are the villain, and we want to root against you.
I will say in my peer group, it started to get that way.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, it started to get that way, where, and maybe it's not, I think the right way to phrase it is not that the Warriors when they had KD were villains.
Yeah.
Draymond Green is a villain.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that the Warriors were villains. I think there was people claiming they had fatigue, that they were tired of seeing.
I think that's the right word.
That, and the fatigue may have been there for some people, at least they claimed, for some people when it comes to the Chicago Bulls.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was I don't think anybody got really tired of Jordan, but I think they were rooting against Chicago because they wanted something different. But again, they wanted Chicago in there.
Yeah.
I think people wanted the Sonics or the Jazz or somebody like that to rise up and beat them. I don't think it was, let's see Utah against Patrick Ewing and the Knicks.
No.
I think it was, we want the Bulls to see them, but we also want them to lose. But there's a line, to your point, between being fatigued and rooting against a team and them being real villains.
Yeah, because I would say if the Nuggets, let's say they win this year, when do you stop liking Jokic and start turning in that fatigue?
Well, we're talking with the NBA. I mean, until recently, all they've known is dynasty. So we got to get to like 3 Nuggets titles.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be Jokic. It wouldn't be Jokic.
Yeah,
it would be Jamal Murray.
Jamal? Okay.
It'd be Jamal Murray, because if he mean mugs and does all of this kind
of
stuff.
He packs, he starts throwing.
Right. and the Nuggets win multiple championships, then Jamal Murray will become the face of, I don't like the Nuggets. Well, what do you not like about them? Oh, Jamal Murray. It wouldn't be Jokic. It would be Murray that they would say that about. 719-24/7-1313 will continue next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Welcome back to Drive Time Sports, 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Don't look now, but the Air Force women's basketball team is starting to catch fire here. And you know when Air Force teams are doing well, when our hyper-local teams are doing well, I want to bring mention to it on these airwaves. Air Force has won 3 in a row now. And at the end of a week with some really good wins, Air Force got their best win, edging out Grand Canyon 65-64. Now, few reasons why it was the best win at the end of a week of great wins. One is because Grand Canyon just a few days prior had handed San Diego State their first conference loss of the year. San Diego State was unbeaten. And everybody looking at San Diego State like they may take over the Mount West now. And Grand Canyon beat them. And so for Air Force to beat that team that showed how good they were by beating San Diego State a few days ago, that makes it the best win at the end of a week with a lot of great wins. Secondly, Air Force was in control of that game for most of the second half. They're up by 8 or 9 points. And not that they planned it this way or wanted it to go this way, but Grand Canyon got back into that game. Air Force went ice cold from the field. They could not make a shot. And Grand Canyon came roaring back and actually took the lead late in the fourth quarter. So for Air Force to come back with about 10 seconds to go, Milani Perry, spin move in the lane, layup, made it, gave Air Force the lead back. And they ended up holding on their last possession, forcing Grand Canyon into a bad shot at the buzzer. That made it a great win because a lesser team, once Grand Canyon took the lead after not having the lead the entire game, especially that late in the game, how many teams have you seen go, okay, that's it? Right? We couldn't hold them off any longer. And, the team that takes the late lead just ends up winning. And Air Force didn't let that happen. They answered back, and then they held defensively. And then you throw on top of it the fact that, once again, Air Force is getting contributions up and down the lineup. Marissa Hargrave, who's a regular in the rotation, only played like 8 or 9 minutes on Saturday. But yet was in there on that last possession because she's one of the better defenders Air Force has. She deflects the inbounds pass, which gets Grand Canyon all out of sorts, and the player who eventually took the shot had to run over the sideline and pick it up and heave up. Not a great-looking shot. Could have gone down, but not a great-looking shot. Like that right there encapsulates what's been going on with Air Force over this last, 7-day period, where they go into Fresno and beat Fresno State. They blow out Utah State last Wednesday, and then culminating in the win against GCU on Saturday. Everybody is contributing, and Marissa Hargrave, someone who had only played 8 or 9 minutes in that game, to come up with maybe the defensive play of the game. Not even maybe, the defensive play of the game. It just shows that everybody is contributing. And this team is starting to become the team that I believe they could be and they believe they can be at the start of the season. This team is as talented as any Air Force has ever had. And with that talent, it's just not just the top line talent, it's the depth that Stacey McIntyre and her staff have brought depth to this team, that even when things have been going good, even when they've made the WNIT or had some of their best finishes in the Mount West, haven't had the depth. They've been very top heavy. They have depth. And for one reason or another, they couldn't put it together. The first part of the conference season was brutal, to be quite honest. Like setback after setback after setback. And it just all of a sudden it's clicked. And it's the best players and it's the depth and it's everything that's clicking right now for Air Force here in the month of February with the Mount West tournament now less than a month away. So a great win for them and a huge milestone hit by Milani Perry, who may well go down as the best player in Air Force history, as she broke the career scoring record in the Division I era of the program. Now, she's going to break the all-time, right? Air Force women's basketball used to be Division II. So the all-time scoring record, she's going to get that too. But Saturday was a milestone in passing Riley Snyder for the most points in Division I history for the program. And I caught up with Milani after the game and asked her, obviously, her thoughts on breaking that record.
I can't put it into words. I'm so blessed. I give all the glory to God, and I thank my family, my team, my coaches. And it's a blessing, honestly.
And you know what's crazy about it? Stacey McIntyre, the head coach of the Falcons, told me after the game, I didn't know this. Milani was originally going to go to Army. I don't know how I'm going to, when we head out to Reno tomorrow, I got to get more to the story here from Milani or from Coach McIntyre. But I had no idea that Milani Perry was all set to go to West Point and ended up in Colorado Springs. And now she's the all-time leading scorer in the Division I era of the program, and by the end of the season will be the all-time leading scorer and maybe thusly the best player that Air Force has ever had. So great things going on with Air Force. Back after this on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. Hello there. Welcome in hour 3 on this Monday. Great to have you, whether you're listening on 740 KVOR, Extra Sports 1300, or the station apps for those 2 stations. And you can hear this show or any of the shows on either station that you so enjoy listening to on a daily basis in crystal clear streaming audio. It is free to download. It is free to use, and they are both sponsored by Diversus Health, Mental Health, and Well-Being for All. If you would like to be a part of the program, which would be amazing, love chatting with you, you could call or text into the show at 719-247-1313. Perhaps you have some thoughts on these, which are the 3 stories driving the show today. All right. Of course, we're going to start with that football game last night. Here's story number 1.
Shotgun snap, 44 Seattle. He's hit as he drops back. The ball free. Picked up by Noosu. Running down the side. 30, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown. And that will seal it, it seems, right now for the Seahawks in Super Bowl 60.
Kevin Harlan on the call for Westwood One. You heard it both here on Extra Sports 1300 and 740 KVOR. An absolute beatdown delivered to the New England Patriots by Seattle. And it's hard for me to not sit there and watch that game and think that that's exactly how the AFC Championship should have gone. Like, maybe not the final score, because remember, there was a snowstorm that rolled through Denver midway through the third quarter, but just the game flow and how in control Seattle was throughout the entire game, that absolutely should have been the Denver Broncos in the AFC Championship against the New England Patriots. And there was a moment in that game where Seattle took a different path against New England than Denver did. They had, like Denver did, a 4th and short plus side of the field, already up by a score. And what did Mike McDonald and the Seahawks decide to do? They decided to take the points. Even with Sam Darnold as their quarterback, Kenneth Walker as their running back, even with all-around better personnel than the Denver Broncos had in the AFC Championship, Seattle still elected to take the points. Why did they do that? Because that's the right thing to do. They made it a 2-score game, and they also prevented New England from getting any type of spark from a potential 4th down stop. Mike McDonald saw a game going the exact same way Sean Payton did and said, I'm not going to make the same mistake he did and go for it on 4th down when it's not necessary, when that's not the right call, and risk giving New England life. And what happened after? What did New England do after that? Nothing. New England could not generate anything against Seattle until it was far too late. And it would have been the same way. It wouldn't even been that. New England never would have gotten anything going because, again, the snowstorm. Sean Payton had to have been physically ill in his home watching that game, knowing full well he could have done that exact same thing and had the exact same result and been coaching last night instead of watching on the couch like the rest of us. It made what happened to the Denver Broncos in that AFC Championship all the more difficult to handle even 2 weeks later, because you know as well as I do that there was nothing preventing the Denver Broncos from doing the same thing to New England that Seattle did. And the only thing that kept them from doing that was Sean Payton. Now, there's an extra step that I am not willing to take. Many people are doing this on social media. Let me speak to that. While I do believe that the Denver Broncos would have been a better match for Seattle, it would not have been one of the worst Super Bowls that any of us have ever seen. I am not going to go so far as to say that the Denver Broncos would have beaten Seattle. And this is where Seattle gets their flowers. They are a worthy champion. They were much better, head and shoulders above any team that would have come out of the AFC. And I told you at the beginning of the playoffs that I'd take about 5 teams in the NFC before, other than Buffalo, I would get to anybody in the AFC. And even with Buffalo, I was taking the leap of faith and just thinking that playoff Josh Allen would show up. But the NFC was the better conference by far. Seattle, LA, take your pick, were all better teams than anyone the AFC could have produced. And Seattle would have beaten the Denver Broncos. And they would be Super Bowl champions anyway. But we would not have been subjected to one of the worst Super Bowls our eyes have ever had the misfortune of watching. Had Sean Payton done the right thing, which Mike McDonald did last night, and take the points. Story number 2 is that Sunday started off on a very unfortunate note. Perhaps you woke up like I did on Sunday morning to the news that Lindsey Vohn's Olympic comeback had met a very, very abrupt, scary, and disappointing end. As 18 seconds into her race, she hit a gate, crashed, and had to be airlifted out. She ended up sustaining, as she called it today on social media, a complex tibia fracture. And it's a fracture that will take multiple surgeries to fix. And what I don't understand is how you can't come out of this whole Lindsey Vonn story and not feel one of these two emotions. Proud of Lindsey Vonn, or maybe admiration. Proud implies a little bit of a personal relationship. Admiration for Lindsey Vonn pushing through this injury and competing. Because throughout sports history, all we do is shower athletes with praise that battle through injuries. We hate load management. People criticize Simone Biles for not competing in the Olympics despite a legitimate issue that kept her from competing. Everyone killed her for it. Here's Lindsey Vonn battling through it, battling through the injury that we all know is like, that's it. Season over. And Lindsey Vonn said, the hell it is. And went out there and competed. So either you have admiration or you feel sympathy for her going through that ordeal and wrecking like that. But the amount of criticism that has come out of this, like how dare Lindsey Vonn ski without an ACL? Like, I understand if there's an insane self-belief, a level of belief that you can't comprehend, like, welcome to the world of athletes. Every single one of these athletes, every single football player that played last night in the Super Bowl, every one of these athletes you're watching compete in Italy have a level of confidence that lay people like you and I cannot fully comprehend. Yeah, Lindsey Vonn thought that she could push through it. Not because she's better than everyone else, but because she believes in what she is capable of. This is not a I'm better than you. This is I'm better than what you think I am with this ACL. And maybe that's overconfidence. Maybe that's hubris. The word hubris has been thrown around a lot. But does that lead to criticism? Should that lead to criticism? I don't understand the almost that's what she gets attitude coming from so many people in the wake of Lindsey Vonn's crash. To me, that is a ridiculous viewpoint. You feel gutted for Lindsey Vonn that her Olympic comeback, as remarkable as it was, comes to that kind of an end, or you admire the fact that she even gave the race a go. It doesn't change my feeling about her whole comeback. Weird. Just weird energy coming from people criticizing Lindsey Vonn. And by the way, Lindsey Vonn in her Instagram post today says that her ACL and past injuries had nothing to do with her crash whatsoever. I thought maybe it would impact the angle she took without being able to put as much weight on the leg that the torn ACL was in. But here's Lindsey Vonn, and you can take her words at face value or not, but she made a point on social media today to say the ACL had nothing to do with it. But yet some people say in some weird way it serves her right for trying to raise. I miss the point in our sports culture where we vilify people for toughing it out and trying to compete. I thought that was an admirable quality in athletes. And the only person she cost is herself. It's not team scheme. It's just Lindsey Vonn. I don't understand the criticism whatsoever. And story number 3 today is out of college football and specifically out of the Mountain West, as they have agreed to allow North Dakota State to pay them a ton of money to join their conference. Yes, North Dakota State of Carson Wentz and Trey Lance, the perennial power in FCS football, is making a jump to FBS, and they're going to be playing Air Force for years to come. This is, for all parties involved, an absolutely huge win. It is a win for the Mountain West because obviously money, ka-ching, they're going to get a lot of it from North Dakota State. But because, to me, this feels like, I know that they recovered to get Grand Canyon after the Pac-12 got Gonzaga, but this is like them getting one back on the Pac-12. We're getting North Dakota State in football. You may have bested us in basketball, Gonzaga over Grand Canyon, but we got North Dakota State. I think it's a huge win for the Mountain West. And it's a huge win for North Dakota State. Because as college football keeps going the direction it's going, I think the FCS level is going to be like irrelevant. You have to move forward. And for this North Dakota State team, what other worlds do they have to conquer at that level? It was time for them to make the jump. Good on them for investing in the program to make the jump. And I think it's going to work out for them, because I think the best news, if you're legitimately a fan of anybody else in the Mountain West next year, whether it be Wyoming, Air Force, UNLV, Nevada, you're breathing a bit of a sigh of relief that North Dakota State is ineligible to play for the Mountain West title for the next couple of years because they're going to be really good, really fast. You watch. In the meantime, they're just going to ruin team seasons. But they're going to be good really right away. Right away, North Dakota State's going to be really good, and it's not going to take them that long to be the class of the Mountain West, which is a good thing for the Mountain West because it forces everybody else to elevate their game. But this is a huge win all around. Win for the Mountain West financially, win for them in their perpetual struggle with the Pac-12, win for North Dakota State, and a win for you if you like college football in the Mountain West because it got better. The only loss that anyone has taken is the ones that they're going to take going to Fargo, and anyone that's in the traveling party to have to go to Fargo, if we're being honest about it. That's less than ideal. But other than that, huge win all around. Kudos to Gloria Nevarez in the Mountain West for getting that done, and kudos to North Dakota State for making the jump. Long overdue, probably. 719-24-7. 1313. Take your thoughts on the three stories that are driving the show. Coming up next, why this weekend is about one Nuggets player. And it's not Nikola Jokic. This isn't hockey. This isn't figure skating. This is extreme international ice racing, where 90 horsepower monsters tear up the ice with 1,600 steel studs and zero fear. It's happening Sunday, February 21st at the Broadmoor World Arena. You could get your tickets today at axs.com. This All-Star weekend in the NBA is shaping up to be about one player above all others, and that is Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray not only will be making his first All-Star game and leading a team that seems like on paper a prohibitive favorite to win, and that's Team World. He is one of the few NBA stars who have pledged that to give their full effort while they are there. It's him and Wembanyama. And now he's competing in the three-point contest. So you have Jamal Murray, and to me, this speaks to his commitment to the All-Star weekend, that he's willing to do this as well. And knowing Jamal Murray, he'll give that just as much, put in as much effort in that as he will the All-Star game. But Jamal Murray, for his entire career, where he's been almost an All-Star, but not really an All-Star, and now he's elevated his game and is well-deserving, and now he's doing everything. And so he's going to do the three-point contest. He's going to lead Team World with his teammate, Nikola Jokic. And I would not be shocked if he gets named the All-Star Game MVP, or games, because there are 3 teams. It would not surprise me at all if Jamal Murray ends up being the story of the weekend, competes in the three-point contest, and is the MVP on Sunday. But this is what you get with first-time All-Stars. The effort level is going to be there, and they want to do everything. They want to soak it all in. They want to make the most out of the weekend, and it seems like what Jamal Murray wants to do. Now, I just wonder if he's allowed to step back and take threes, or he has to, just jump straight up. Because as far as handicapping his chances to win the three-point contest, let's just say the threes he makes in games are a little bit different than the ones he will take in the three-point contest. But we'll see. I mean, I would imagine that he beat Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard is competing in the three-point contest. Let me refresh your memory on Damian Lillard. Now, you know who he is, but do you realize that he has not played a game yet this season for the Portland Trail Blazers? Did you know that he was back on the Blazers? That's first of all. Second of all, he hasn't played a game. And third of all, he won't play a game because he's out for the season. And yet he's going to compete in the three-point contest. But that gives everybody the rabbit to chase, right? At Greyhound parks, they send the rabbit out, and that's what all the dogs chase after. Damian Lillard is the marker for everybody else. Everybody else, including Jamal Murray in that competition, have to say to themselves, just don't get beat by Damian Lillard. If I catch Damian Lillard or pass Damian Lillard, I'm good. Even if I don't win the contest, I just can't finish behind Damian Lillard, who has not played in an NBA game this year and is out for the season with an injury. I can't lose to that guy. What a bizarre thing for the NBA to do. And it's not even in Oakland, and the reason, or Portland, and the reason I say that is because that would be a reason, like Damian Lillard's hometown or Damian Lillard's home market. Why is he competing in this? Makes very little sense to me. But he is, and nobody better lose to him, or else there will be a fair amount of ridicule that will come along with it. So Jamal Murray will be competing in the 3-point contest as well as the All-Star games. I'm ready to be heard again because I saw the promo for it last night during the Super Bowl. I'm getting a little bit excited for this. The Tears for Fears on the promos for the All-Star game in this Team World versus 2 Team USAs. And now the fact that 2 Denver Nuggets are going to be in it, and one of them pledges to put an end to the BS that's been going on with that competition for the last few years. I'm allowing myself to look forward to this. And we'll see if I end up regretting that by the weekend's end. We've talked a lot about the football aspect of the Super Bowl. Shall we get into the rest of it? Because the biggest story today is the halftime show. And that's partly because of it being probably the biggest story going into the Super Bowl, but also because the Super Bowl, the game itself, did not deliver a whole lot to really talk about, if we're being honest. I mean, today we're talking about whether the Broncos could have been a better match for Seattle and how Denver should have been in that game. So we're not even really talking about the game that much. I will say, and I said this last year with Kendrick Lamar, okay? Regardless of the performer, I do not like the trend of me needing to go on to the internet and figure out what everything I just watched was. It's like when I watch a Christopher Nolan movie. Like, I got to go in, okay, explain the ending of The Prestige to me here. Like, did I really see what I saw? And no spoilers, because I want every human being on the planet to watch that movie, and I don't want to take away. But if you've seen The Prestige, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you think you know what the ending was, but you just want to double check. I don't like that with my halftime shows, and the last 2 have been this way. You only get half of the picture with Kendrick Lamar and Bad Bunny. What you see is only half of the picture. In Super Bowl halftime shows of years past, it's just what you see is what you get. It's the concert itself, it's the guest appearances, but both Kendrick Lamar and Bad Bunny, and I feel like I have to blame Kendrick Lamar because now everyone's going to be doing this moving forward. Trying to one-up on the Easter eggs. Who can hide the most Easter eggs in their halftime shows? Because if you go back and you read about everything that was a part of that, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't understand half of what, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Bad Bunny was singing in Spanish. Like, the kid, I just thought, oh, cool. He's given a Grammy to a young him, and he's saying you could be like this one, the symbolism. Oh, no. That kid has other significance. And then I had to be like, wait, did that couple actually get married? It looked like they were just regular people getting married, but was it all a gag? No. Apparently, that couple invited him to their wedding because, of course, Bad Bunny's going to show up to some random couple's wedding. But Bad Bunny, good for him. So, like, I'm not coming to your wedding. But if you want to come have a wedding at the halftime of the Super Bowl. So but both, especially the wedding thing, is a really cool thing. Right? I just thought that was really cool. And that's got to make their whole lives to have that happen, for them to be married on that stage. How cool for them. But I I would have liked to know as I'm watching it, like that's what's going on. But both of these last couple of halftime shows, it's been like, you think you understand what's going on. You really don't. Please go on social media or Google or Reddit or something like that, or ask AI. Man, every other commercial was something about AI. So, look, I get all the other stuff. I'm not into all the other stuff. That's not what this is about. I'll just say that I know and enjoy 2 Bad Bunny songs. He only sang one, so I was disappointed in that. Kendrick Lamar the year before did a lot of his deep cuts, which I didn't particularly like, even though I know those songs. It's like, no, I came here for the hits. This is the most popular sport in our country, the biggest event. Like, just play the hits, please. So I don't think either were bad. And I would say in terms of production value, Bad Bunny really blew Kendrick Lamar out of the water. Like, production value is much better. But my knowledge of Bad Bunny's music was already so limited. Do you have to deprive me of one of the 2 songs that I know and enjoy? Play the hits. Play Freebird. I did think it was guest appearances. I would have liked to have been alerted that Jessica Alba was on. I would have looked closer if I knew that Jessica Alba was going to be there in the halftime show. But like a friend of mine texted me, Pedro Pascal. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't see him. Like the Easter eggs. And you know who's really to blame for this? This is Taylor Swift's doing. She does this. Nothing that she presents to you can just be taken at face value. Everything is an Easter egg. Everything requires a deep dive and a puzzle to complete. And call me lazy, call me old. I don't know what the correct adjective is, but they probably both apply. I just want great production value, which Bad Bunny delivered absolutely. And I want the songs that I know and enjoy. And I only got one of those from Bad Bunny, and I only got like 1 or 2 of those from Kendrick Lamar, if I'm being honest. Like, I knew more of his songs than Bad Bunny, but this is where we're going. There's no turning back. And if you want to pin this on Taylor Swift, you can pin that on Taylor Swift, because I think she started this trend in the music industry of not being able to just like consume what is going on and understand it. But the energy, the production value is good. Like, Kendrick Lamar was just kind of walking around. So there was that. I have also realized, speaking of not being in the target demo or having my finger on the pulse of society, I looked at a list of the most enjoyed, most liked commercials. And it would be the exact inverse of what I enjoyed. I don't know about you. I am not all about the Ring doorbell that's going to be constantly scanning our neighborhoods looking for lost dogs. I don't know about you. I didn't look at that as the technological breakthrough to save all of mankind that perhaps other people did. But that was the most liked commercial. Was the Ring doorbell to find the lost puppies. Suddenly stapling flyers to telephone poles is like not effective anymore. Second most liked was the Clydesdales, and this is where I get into trouble. I don't like the Clydesdales. I don't like the polar bears. I don't like any of those commercials that ever air. And I know the polar bear this time around was Pepsi, not Coke. I don't care. I don't like the polar bears. I don't care about the Clydesdales. And the Clydesdale was the second most popular, second most liked. And it's just every single one. Apparently, the really emotional, serious, emotional commercials are the ones that hit this year. So, and what tugs at our heartstrings more than anything else? Animals. You're finding lost puppies, number one. Eagle on the back of a horse, number two. I'll tell you the ones I liked. My favorite one was early on. Benson Boone and Ben Stiller. How is that not one of the best Super Bowl commercials? I was laughing hysterically. Benson Boone and Ben Stiller for Instacart, where Benson Boone's being who Benson Boone is. If you're not familiar, he's very Freddie Mercury-ish in the way that he performs. And there's Ben Stiller, who kind of looks like White from Dodgeball. Like, that's what his character reminded me of. And he's trying to like one up Benson Boone, and he ends up, it goes horribly wrong. I thought that was hysterical. That was my favorite commercial. My second favorite commercial was towards the end of the Super Bowl when we were introduced to Meal Diamond, Andy Samberg, just running around a restaurant masquerading as the Meal Diamond as opposed to Neil Diamond, and is just, this is how I make friends. Like, everything Andy Samberg does is just him is funny. So I like that one. Here's where the popular vote, if you will, and my vote aligned. I thought that the Xfinity Wi-Fi with the Jurassic Park was brilliant. I love that. And the what if the Wi-Fi was working and now Jurassic Park, everything has changed and it's all great. I like that one. And then the Goodwill Duncan, right? All because of the cameos, right? Aniston, Brady, Affleck, Carlton from Fresh Prince, Urkel. I enjoyed talking my sons through, okay, that's this person. They were on this show, and that was good. And then this was another one that was ranked highly in terms of likability. I liked, and to me, it's like kind of the way I feel about the Ring doorbell thing. Chris Hemsworth talking about all the ways that Alexa could kill him. I very much enjoyed that commercial where his wife is like looking at him like he's insane because he's going through all these like Final Destination type scenarios in which his Alexa in his home is going to kill him. I like funny. And there are a few of those. So there's all the ancillary stuff with the Super Bowl last night, the halftime show and the commercials. If you have thoughts, 719-247-1313. We'll actually end the show with your text messages coming up next on 740 KVOR and Extra Sports 1300. Here's the other problem with everything being Easter eggs in a Super Bowl halftime show. Sometimes the internet gets it wrong, and apparently the internet got it wrong initially. Nope, the kid that Bad Bunny handed the Grammy to, actor, just kid. So, but I feel like it's making my point that maybe just put like the symbolism, and I have no problem with symbolism, but maybe like more overt that we can all kind of pick up on and not, all be confused about. But let me say, it didn't make it a bad Super Bowl halftime show at all. It was still enjoyable. The thing that but like I said, I don't like having to search for Easter eggs. I have graduated from that. I did that when I was much younger. No more Easter egg finding, either literal Easter eggs or the whatever, these Easter eggs. I don't need them. And please, especially if you're an artist that I already don't know a lot of your songs, just please play the ones I know. And yes, I am the person that every Super Bowl halftime show should have in mind. That's exactly what I'm saying. What does Ryan want? Ryan's fine with Bad Bunny. Just please play these two songs. And Ryan can't tell you what songs they are. He can only, sloppily go through the beat. Like he played the bump, 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 that one. And I kind of know Spanish. And then Bad Bunny steps on the stage and I'm like, I don't know Spanish. I knew when he was mentioning the countries. I picked up every single one of those. But what he is though? He's this. It's the same as what they're doing. You know that they just announced that they're playing a game in France and Australia. Okay, so if you have a problem with or didn't like that Bad Bunny was the Super Bowl halftime show, fine, but I would expect you to also be a little bit tired of the NFL putting your favorite team's games at the butt crack of dawn, in Frankfurt, Germany, because it's the same thing. They want to go global. They want to grow more fans overseas, and it's good business. I'm not arguing that. But that's who it's for, and I'm not a huge fan of the international games. I would just as soon have no international. Like, if you want to play in Canada, I'm about North America. You want to play in Canada? Cool. You want to play in Mexico City? Awesome. Really what it is I just have a big problem with the time difference. I don't dislike anybody in Germany or London or Australia. I just hate that my schedule of watching the NFL has been thrown off. So once again, yes, I am the center of the universe, and the NFL should only make decisions based on what I would like. So, not the target demo for the halftime show, but I thought it was good as a performance, really good. Guest stars that I noticed at first blush, good. Lady Gaga, Ricky Martin. I really just would like at that time, once Ricky Martin, just do Livin' La Vida Loca. I know it wasn't on the set list. I know it's not the vibe, but just sing Livin' La Vida Loca, Ricky. That's what the people want. Yeah. And then the commercials. More funny, less serious. And I think that's my whole thing with this. Like, if there was a, deeper meanings behind things, that's great. Like, I don't begrudge that, but that's like not what I'm. what I'm tuning in for. I'm very surface when it comes to this Super Bowl stuff, but it's good. Who's it going to be next year? Who do you say? LA? So can we just run back Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and just have them perform again? Like, can we just do that one? That goes down as my all-time favorite. What's your favorite halftime show?
Oh, Prince.
Prince is, yeah, good one.
Easily.
Yeah.
It's one of those where it was just a show, music, Purple Rain in the Rain. How could you beat that?
Yeah, I always put Prince separate from everybody else because he had unfair home field advantage with Mother Nature pouring rain on him.
Right.
That's not fair. Not everybody has that opportunity.
Right. I would say Prince, then Snoop Dogg, and that was just a cool experience.
That's my favorite.
That one you can't beat. And then if I'm going off production, I think if it was not COVID year, I think The Weeknd would have had a good show.
Weekends like Kendrick Lamar, like Bad Bunny, like I go in and I say, just please hit these two songs. And then when he doesn't hit both and he only hits one, I go, dang it.
Right. I feel if you have mainstream songs, like when you're on that stage, it's awesome. But at the same time, there's probably a lot of people that don't know you. You have to play the mainstream.
The hits. I'm going to play the hits. And look, to be fair, you know, with Bad Bunny, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe he hit all his hits. I just know that I know two songs and he only did one.
Right.
That I know. So maybe he did do all of his big hits. I wouldn't.
Yeah. Maybe he did. Maybe he did a remix of them and you still just didn't know.
Maybe it's like Pedro Pascal and Jessica Alba. I didn't even know. I didn't catch it.
Exactly.
I didn't catch it at
if
first.
The beat's not there, I had no idea what song was getting played.
I had to go on the internet and find that out. Couple of texts. We got like 2 minutes. Got any texts on the?
We had one saying from Brett. It was very easy to root against Josh McDaniels.
Yes, he's not a super likable guy.
Yes. And then from the 719, the Broncos and the Washington Redskins was horrible. Doug Williams just destroyed us, and Joe Montana destroyed Denver and New Orleans for that Super Bowl as well. That was awful.
Yeah, well, I said earlier we were going through a list that CBS or somebody had.
Broncos.
And the only ones that are okay is when Elway beat the Packers and when Von Miller strip sacked Cam Newton. Every other Broncos Super Bowl has been garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's, according to that news outlet, and looking back, it's not. I didn't think the Super Bowl where they beat Atlanta was like particularly terrible, but that was lopsided.
Yeah,
like they jumped on Atlanta right out of the gate, and that.
So you sure you wanted the Broncos in this one?
Wait, right.
Against that team.
Maybe it wouldn't have been because just the Broncos, when they play in the Super Bowl, it's not compelling.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think it would have been a better game, but ultimately in the end, the better team won, the superior team to anything the AFC could have produced this year. So all the credit in the world to the Seattle Seahawks. Just wish it was a little bit better of a game. And I think the Broncos would have given Seattle a little bit better of a game. That will do it for the show today. Appreciate your patronage. Enjoy your evening. Back. Well, we'll talk to you later. How about that?